Oh, sorry. Give me one quick second here, guys. Sorry.
Of course, you say this
Okay.
just as I put the stream live. But no.
All right, there we go. All right, man. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 127 of the Laravel News podcast. My name is Jake Bennett, and with me, as always, is the wonderful, the brand new dad for a second time, Mr. Michael Dorinda.
I'm twice the father I was the last time we spoke.
We need to have like an applause meter or like applause, like like a little soundboard.
Yeah,
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
thank you.
So cool. So yeah, it was
All the applause is for my wife. She did all the work. I
yeah.
just kind of
Yeah.
hung out at the hospital, and yeah.
So tell us name, size, weight, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you in real measurements, not in whatever your fraudulent metric system is. So it was Olivia Ray Helene. She was born at 6:39 p.m. on the 11th of September. Both my 11th of September and yours. So because of time zones, we
Nice.
overlap there. She
Nice.
was
Look at that.
2.71 kilos and 49 centimeters. So she's a little bit longer than what Eli was. So 5 centimeters longer and 10 grams heavier. So they're basically, she was a week later. So Eli was born
Right.
at
Yeah.
35 plus 6 and Liv was born 36 plus 5. So
Yeah,
he was a bit earlier, so he had to spend time
yeah,
in. He was
right,
3 weeks in NICU, but Liv was close enough to 37 weeks that they're like, no problems. So she was a
nice.
little cool. She was 36.5 degrees Celsius, which was apparently cool. That's the normal temperature for an adult. But they just had it under lights, under the heat lamps, and she's ticking along. She's feeding well. She's sleeping well. She's cool. Ree had a bit of
Nice,
trouble
man.
trying to settle her last night, and she's exhausted, the poor thing. And I said, do you want me to come
Of
into the
course.
hospital?
Yeah.
But we've got Eli at home as well, and we don't want to disrupt his routine and his sense of normal too much until Mum and Olivia are back home. So yeah,
For sure.
just playing it by ear at the moment. But yeah, that's probably the most exciting release that we've seen all
Yeah.
year. Never mind
I
Laravel 8.
love it.
We've got a
Yeah,
baby.
exactly. Dude, that's awesome. And are you going to pick her up today, actually? Bring her back home?
We're not going to pick her up today. I think maybe tomorrow, but probably Tuesday at this stage. Because we
Nice.
had the cesarean, it's more keeping her
Sure,
in the
sure.
hospital than anything else. So, but she's recovering well. She seems to be recovering a lot better this time around than what she did with Eli, which is good. It was a little bit more about knowing what to expect and knowing what the recovery was like. But yeah, she was straight onto the Gatorade, and she chugged like 2 bottles of Gatorade and a jug of water as soon as they
She's
took
an
her
expert.
catheter out,
She's
and
an
she's just
expert. She
like,
knows what she's doing.
yeah, yeah. Because last time they took the catheter out, and then they had to put it back in, and it's not a pleasant experience once you've got the
Oh,
feeling back.
gosh.
So, but
Oh,
yeah,
my.
so everything's going
Yeah.
well. But we need to keep this recording tight because
We
I
do. Let's
need
do it.
to go and visit this wonderful child of mine. So let's talk about Laravel 8, Jake.
Laravel 8 or 11.7. Laravel 7.27 first. Which
I
one?
mean, let's talk about Laravel 8 because that's more exciting.
Okay, let's talk about Laravel 8. Here we go. Okay, folks, so Laravel 8 has been released. I will say this is probably one of the biggest releases, and I mean, obviously in a long time, but with Laravel 8, it's like there's a lot of really cool stuff in here. So lots of new features. Laravel Jetstream, of course, is a big one. A models directory, model factory classes, which are amazing. There's migration squashing, rate limiting improvements, time testing helpers, dynamic blade components, and many more features. So we like to point out that starting with Laravel 6, Laravel now follows Semver. And so we release a new major version every 6 months. There is a link to the release process if you're interested in knowing how that works. But having said that, let's jump into some of the features here. So Laravel Jetstream is an improvement on the existing Laravel UI scaffolding that was found in previous versions. So a lot of times you'd have this auth scaffolding. This is a better version of it. It provides a starting point for new projects, including login, registration, email verification, two-factor authentication, session management, API support via Laravel, and team management. Basically, think about it this way. If you took Spark and split it apart and did all the team management stuff on the one side and then all the billing stuff on the other side. The team management stuff and everything not billing, that's what Laravel Jetstream is. That's kind of the easiest way to think of it. It manages all of that for you. And Mr. Drinder, you've actually had some experience installing it this last week. How'd that all go?
I would not recommend adding it to an existing application. Look, it's
good
possible.
to know.
It's certainly possible. We were not too far into building out the team side of things, so a lot of it was just around renaming methods, and the way that Jetstream handles current team is slightly different to the way that we were handling it previously. So it was shuffling things around, and just some of the way that things were set up inside Jetstream were a little bit different to what we had. So not an impossible task. I was actually working through it whilst I was sitting in the hospital. So, yeah, do not recommend, but it's not impossible. But definitely if you're starting a new application, the ability to have a user profile, like self-management, being able to change your password, change your name, avatars, being able to handle two-factor authentication out of the box, which is really nice and something that a lot of people look at, and having to kind of implement it manually is not very nice, but that's all done for you now. Database-based session management by default if you're using Jetstream. And team management is the other big one, as well as API credentials and things like that. And it handles roles as well. So if you want to define your roles in the application as well, bunch of policies for teams and users and things like that. It's really polished. There's a few places that Taylor has been tweeting during the week that he's been making a little bit more extensible and extendable and things like that. So definitely keep an eye on that. But overall, I think it's a really nice thing. There's a few people that are sort of like, why is Laravel forcing me to use Inertia or Livewire? That is not the case. They're just the stacks that have been chosen out of the box to build these specific parts of the scaffolding out, as well as Tailwind. So it's the Jetstream scaffolding is built using Tailwind, and then you have the option of using either Livewire, which is a project from Caleb Porzio, or Inertia JS, which is a project from Jonathan Rennick. Those two pieces of tooling are used to handle all of the Jetstream UI and backend functionality. You do not need to use those bits for your application. So if you are happy just to have them sitting there and doing their thing, unless you wanted to change the front end, there's no reason really that you need to dive into any of that stuff. So they're there to facilitate the UI scaffolding, and then you build the rest of your application around it, basically.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, if nobody's forcing you to use any of it, to be real honest, like, number one, nobody's forcing you to use Laravel, but certainly nobody's forcing you to use Jetstream either. But the other great thing is it's open source. I think it is unreasonable for anybody to request that they build it out 100 times using everybody's favorite stack, like whatever that happens to be, right? So these are just the two that they happen to choose, and they are, the people who created these are Laravel community members who largely contributed to the building of these portions of it with Jetstream, right? So if you want to be one of those people, if you want to submit a vanilla JavaScript version or something, hey, go for it. It's open source, so you can do that. That's good. Okay, we've got a models directory back into Laravel 8. So the new application skeleton includes an app models directory. All generator commands assume that the models will exist in that directory. However, if it does not exist, the framework just falls back and it assumes the application keeps models within the app folder. So if you generate a new Laravel 8 application and you want to keep it as Michael would, all the models will straight in your app folder. Just delete that models directory and everything will go back to how it was. We've got these model factory classes, and these are eloquent model factories. They're now class-based, which allows you to have relationships. It's like one of those things. It's I'm not going to explain it on the air. If you go look at the docs or you go look at the attached show notes, you'll see all the amazing things that are being generated here. One of my favorite parts is that you can now have your own methods, right? Like on these class-based factories, which is really nice. And then also, I love the fact that I can just call the class and say : factory instead of having to say factory and then the class name. So I like that too. Okay, we've got migration squashing. This is a good one. So if you have an old application, it's not legacy, just an old application that's got lots and lots of migrations, you can squash them down to a single SQL file, and it's executed when you're first running your migrations, followed by any remaining migrations. So this speeds up your migration process for your tests, improved rate limiting. I'll let you read through that. Time testing helpers, which I think we may actually be talking about a little bit, but basically the Carbon PHP library, which allows you to do something called set time, or sorry, what is it? Set test now, I think is what it is, which basically allows you to lock the current time, or you lock a time in your application, and then any spot where you're using Carbon within your application will use that test time. So basically just introduce some new helpers for that. We have dynamic blade components where you need to render a blade component dynamically. So you have the ability to do that now. Basically, it's like using Vue. If you use Vue and you use the is directive, like you can specify the component that you're rendering by using is. You can essentially do that now. So you can say x dash dynamic dash component and then colon component directive. You just pass in the component name, right? And then you can it renders out whatever the component is that you pass in. Lots of cool stuff, lots more in the upgrade guide. And of course, don't forget about Laravel Shift if you want a really easy way to do the updates. I think they also handle moving your class-based factories, moving you to class-based factories as well as some other fun stuff. So check that out as well. Wow, lots of stuff there. Laravel 8.
I would not recommend doing the manual migration of of factories to class-based factories. We didn't have the luxury of using Shift because we have our model factories in a separate package. So it's not actually part of the main app. So Shift wouldn't have detected them. So I did about 200 factory files manually, and it was not fun, but they are much nicer to work with now. So definitely check that out. The next thing we have, Laravel 7.27 is security fixes aside. I think Laravel 7 is an LTS release. It's probably an LTS release. Security fixes aside, Laravel 6, my mistake. Laravel 7 is not an LTS release, but it will receive security fixes until March of 2021. So security fixes aside, Laravel 7 won't see any new releases now. 7.27 was released with the ability to use an alias of the morphed model, which was contributed by the Web Artisan 7. This allows you to use an alias of a morphed model directly in your code. There's also basic padding methods added for strings, which was contributed by Travis Elkins. This wraps around PHP's string_pad method for both the str and stringable classes. The methods include pad both, pad left, and pad right. That's all we saw in 7.27, and those things will feature inside of Laravel 8 as well.
Nice. On to the news, my friend. We have got a brand new beginner Tailwind course, which has been created by Chris Civella, or at Chris on Code on Twitter and on GitHub, I believe. So the course includes 75 separate videos and over 9 hours of content. So you get Tailwind CSS main concepts. He talks about spacing with margin and padding, box properties, typographies, pseudo classes, which I did not know you could do with Tailwind, pseudo classes. I guess unless we're talking about hover. We're talking about like hover and active in that? Maybe that's what he's talking about.
New. I think Taylor. I think Adam cracked that recently, yeah.
Yeah, pseudo classes or pseudo elements. Anyway, I'll have to take a look at that one. I didn't know that one existed. Animations, gradients, layout concepts, lots of good stuff. So if you wanted to start using Tailwind and you're not sure where to start, this course is a great way to go. It's priced at $47, and if you use our special Laravel News coupon, you can get an additional 20% off. There's that. All right, what else we got, my man?
We have the ability to easily change the default database auto increment value in Laravel migrations. So
why would we want to do that?
Well, perhaps you don't want your brand new SaaS to look like it is a brand new SaaS. You want it to look like it's been around for a little while, so you might set your auto incrementing ID to 1,000 or 1,500 or something like that. So in your migrations, when you create a new table and you have the table ID method, you can chain the starting value method to the end of the ID and pass it a number, and that will set the default auto increment. So instead of starting at 1, it will start at whatever that value is. For most apps, you probably don't need this, but there are situations where you might want to do it. It might be that you've upgraded an application from vanilla PHP to Laravel, and you want to make sure that the migrations tick over from there. So there's the option to do that. I wouldn't say it's a very common thing, but it's certainly available there if you want to do it.
The next on the list, we have the Laravel installer now, including support for Jetstream. So kind of let's maybe roll that into another one, which is updating the Laravel installer. So installing the new Laravel installer, which basically is what you use to scaffold on a new Laravel project, is really easy using Composer. But if you already have it, that's really only if you have it already. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm reading this and it's not making sense to me. It's really easy to do. I did it just the other day. The latest Laravel installer is going to be essential in your workflow, so make sure you get the newest version. We have a blog post on how exactly to do so, which is really simple. But if you didn't already hear, it's been released and it's going to include support for Jetstream. So it goes in behind the scenes. Instead of downloading an archive from Laravel's build servers, it does a Composer create project. So again, we have directions for how to update the installer. You do your Composer require, or if you have some problems, everybody's favorite human, Mr. Paul Redmond, goes through some troubleshooting steps for uninstalling, reinstalling, updating the global Composer JSON file, verifying your update, all that good stuff. So that is all in there, but one of the items that he wanted to talk about as well, which is the Laravel installer, includes support for Jetstream, which is, as Michael mentioned previously, also has support for either Livewire or Inertia. And then it asks you a couple other configuration questions, such as will your application use Teams, et cetera, and goes down the list. So there you go. That's that for the new Laravel installer.
One thing that is important to know about the new Laravel installer is that because it's shifted from downloading the zip archive from Laravel build servers to using a Composer create project, those are actually hosted on Laravel servers. If you do not upgrade within the next month or two, I don't think Taylor has set a specific date, but once those servers are shut down, if you are using the older version of the Laravel installer, you won't, it just won't work because there'll be nothing to download from. So using Composer Create Project is the way to go. And that will pull things down directly using Composer. It'll pull down from GitHub and get you all set up and running. So definitely check out the instructions to update if you haven't done so, and certainly install it if you haven't got it on your computer already.
Nice. All right. What else we got here? Blade UI kit.
Yeah.
Hit it.
Blade UI kit is it's been in development for a couple of months from Dries Vince, and he's been testing and fine-tuning, and he's now finally released this package publicly. Blade UI kit is a set of renderless components to utilize in your Laravel Blade views, and in all essence, it is a collection of useful utilities connecting the dots between different parts of the tool stack, so the Tailwind, Alpine, JS, Laravel, and Livewire. It is made for Blade, which is Laravel's powerful template language. By default, Blade UI Kit ships with components like a countdown timer, markdown and rich text editors, an avatar generator, form inputs, markdown to HTML converters, date and color pickers, and a whole lot more. So basically, Laravel's default alert snippet that is in the UI scaffolding is essentially an if statement wrapped around a div class, alert success, and all of that kind of stuff. In Blade UI Kit, this is turned into a Blade component, and you can just reference it as x-alert. So the HTML attribute is x-alert, and you just pass it the classes that you want to paint that component with. It abstracts the implementation detail away from your views. It keeps them, slim, tidied down. If you've ever used view components, it's the same kind of thing. Blade components are certainly being used a lot more, and they're a lot more powerful in Laravel 8. So it's easy to nest them and pass attributes down from your application into the components, so you can build them up. So in the application that we're building, we have got in an application that I've got at work, we have wrapped the form input components that are shipped with Blade UI Kit, which are renderless, so they don't have any opinions about style. We've wrapped them in our own application specific ones, and we apply our Tailwind classes to that, so that passes down. So you can keep everything nice and tidy. It allows you to automatically set the ID and the name and the type and all of that kind of stuff, and preserve all of your class definitions and your style definitions in one place without having to, do the boilerplate code of creating the actual input itself. So definitely check out the show notes, which will have the blog post in there, which also links to an example Laravel project that makes use of some of the components in the Blade UI kit. It's still early days for Blade UI Kit, meaning that there's probably still some design flaws and things that need to be changed and fixed in future. But it's a definitely a solid starting point if you're looking at getting up and running with some Blade UI components. So check that out, and thanks to Dries for putting that together.
Nice job, Dries. Looks really good. We talked about time traveling a couple times. We're just going to give some specific examples here. So this is a small helper feature that's coming to Laravel 8, and it's the ability to fluently time travel in your tests. So it allows you to test easily for things like what happens when a free trial ends or the next billing date comes around. So there's a quick example that Nuno shared on Twitter. In your test, basically, what you would have had to do previously is carbon/carbon : set test now, and then you'd have to pass in an actual date time string. Or you could say, you could get a new instance of carbon and say add 5 minutes to that and pass that in as the set test now time. You could do that, and that's fine. But it wasn't. It didn't look super great, and if you didn't know what in the world it was doing as a person coming in from the outside, then it wasn't very helpful. So what you can do now is very simply in your tests, just say this travel 5 minutes, and that will push you 5 minutes into the future. Or this travel 1 year, and that will push you 1 year into the future. Or this travel 2, and then you can pass in an actual timestamp, such as user trial ends at. Right, so they'll push you to that exact timestamp, and then you can see exactly what would happen in that case. So, for example, you might go get a dashboard route and assert that you can see that your free trial is expired, right? So it makes your tests very fluent, makes it very obvious exactly what you're trying to do, and so that's pretty awesome. I will just, it's not really a caution. Laravel uses Carbon underneath the hood for nearly everything, but if you happen to not be using Carbon for something, it's not going to work. This won't work for that, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're just using manual date times somewhere, this won't work for your code to be testing because it won't affect those vanilla date times. It won't do anything with it. It only works if you're using Carbon, right? So it's a little bit of a push, I think, from the community just to say, like, hey, let's do this. Let's adopt Carbon as like the thing that we're using. It is better for sure. So do that if you're not already.
Yeah.
Okay, on to packages.
Packages. Managing environment variables with a new package called Echo. Echo allows you and your team to effortlessly and securely share non-production environment variables without the overhead of setting up any dedicated secret servers. So this is a package by Adam Campbell. He's at Hot Meteor on Twitter. And by design, the package isn't meant for production secrets, but it does provide an easy and secure way to share variables with other project maintainers without the need to set up any of the third-party secret management for development. It works by storing a local vault file to permanently store any environment variable you don't want to lose. In the repo, the package provides a remote.echo file in the root of the repo, and this is comprised of shared encrypted keys using the same strategy used by GitHub for safely storing unique key value pairs. Once you have the initial setup completed, you basically just go echo env:fresh, and then you can push and pull your env file from the .echo using env:pull and env:push. So if you've ever used the Laravel Vapor CLI, it's a very similar concept to that. It seems like a useful thing, especially if you're in a team, rather than having to copy and paste keys in Slack or send emails backwards and forwards and things
all
like
the
that,
time.
which I know, and you've obviously done it as well. This is just a nice way to keep everyone in sync with those credentials, and you don't have to worry about giving people access to applications, SendGrid or whatever mail provider you're using and things like that to give them keys. You can just say, here are the test credentials in this file. Just pull them down as you need them. So definitely check out the README for further details and how to switch between GitHub organizations and things like that. We will have links to it all in the show notes. And thanks to Adam for putting that all together.
I have two little tag-ons here. The first one is there is a paid application called envault.dev. envault.dev, which we've talked about on the show before. This one that we've just talked about, Echo, is specifically not for production secrets, right? Mm-hmm. Not for production environment variables. So that's fine, and that's great, and that's how it was designed. If you needed to manage production level ENVs, envault.dev might be a good option for you. It's $24 a lifetime, pay once, use it forever. So it is a different sort of beast, but it looks like it's pretty well done and looks cool. One other thing I was going to say is if you do happen to share secrets across your teams in some sense or another, a good thing to look at is saltify.io, which will create these one-time little quick secrets for you. And it's actually got a little plugin for Slack as well. So you can just say /saltify, and then it'll ask you what you want the secret to be. And then you paste in the secret and it'll salt it. And that way you don't end up with these randomly shared secrets sprinkled around your Slack channels. Yeah, that's for free. That's all. Okay, let's see here. Manage Laravel assets in cloud with Lasso. So this is an interesting package as well. These are actually two really well done packages. Like they've both got like branding and everything around them. They're not just a GitHub repo. So Lasso's got like this really nice web page. It's Sam, and I actually just messaged him. I think it's Carrie. I'm gonna I should go look at my direct message. Yeah. And so what it does is it aims to make your development life easier by compiling and storing your Webpack assets in the cloud. So when it comes to compiling assets, you kind of have two sort of options. You can either compile locally and push them up with your Git commits. But what you end up with that is you end up with lots of merge conflicts. Anytime you push something and somebody else has compiled after you or whatever, there's always nasty merge conflicts. You got to deal with those, which is really annoying. Or you have to do it in the cloud during deployment. Sorry, probably not during cloud. That's not in the cloud. That's not probably not the right way to say it, but during your CI, right? And you have to compile them on the server. And that's fine, but sometimes it can take freaking forever for your deployments because you have to download everything if you don't have any caching set up or something like that. So what Lasso basically allows you to do is kind of get the best of both worlds, where you can compile locally and then you can push those assets up using Lasso Publish, and that will send those values up to a cloud-based storage. And then in your deployment, I think you say Lasso : sync or something like that. And then basically what that will do is that will pull down those assets using the git commit hash that it was stored with down to your public directory so that you can then consume those. So your team members, they can use the power of their local machine to compile those assets so you don't have to wait for them to happen on the server. You can all stay in sync using those so that, if they're not committed, right? But it's in a pull request. All you have to do is run Lasso sync, and it'll pull down those assets for you, so you don't have to yarn install and recompile every single time. So it's really, really cool. I'm a huge fan. I'm excited to try this out in my own projects. But we actually wanted to have him on our other show this last week, and it didn't work out. But eventually we will, probably. So thanks, Sam. Great job on this. Looks really, really great, and excited to check that out.
Yeah.
Okay. What else we got? Another official Laravel package.
This is a official one, yeah. Vapor UI Dashboard is an open source dashboard for Laravel apps running in Laravel Vapor. It provides a beautiful dashboard within your Vapor-powered application that allows you to monitor your application's logs and failed queue jobs. So this is a package built by Nuno Maduro. I think it's the first real piece of work that he's done since starting at Laravel. Application and logs in Vapor are sent to CloudWatch by default, and you can now search them via the new Vapor UI and further filter by log type, which includes HTTP, CLI, and queue logs. Vapor UI provides a failed job page as well, where you can view a list of failed jobs with the details about the failure, and you can also retry or delete that job. The dashboard is accessible via Vapor UI, and you can lock down the access to that page using authorization gate logic in the package's Vapor UI service provider, which if you've used Telescope or Horizon or Nova, it's a very similar thing. It's just defining a gate in the application, and then you just specify an array of email addresses by default for your users that you want to have access, or you can put in whatever other logic you need in there so you can check whether or not that user has a specific permission or whatever and allow them through. So I've been using it a little bit, and it's a lot nicer than going into CloudWatch and trying to parse through logs and looking in SQS and things like that. So definitely check it out if you're running an application in Vapor. Nuno published an article on the Laravel blog outlining the package itself, including screenshots and an overview of the functionality. So you can definitely check that out. We'll have links to all of it in the show notes.
Awesome. Hey, we got one more package we want to go over here, and this is one that is called Finance. It's by Austin Kregel. It's a self-hosted finance app that helps you get a better understanding of your personal finances. It's built with Laravel and Vue, and it's a useful application for looking over your finances, and another open source example of a real Laravel application built with Vue.js. So you can take a look at this just for reference, or you can take a look at it to actually use for your own finances. You can browse transactions, group them, set up alerts, and do other things like that. The interesting piece that I really like about this is that you can actually link your bank's transactions into the app using Plaid. So Plaid is what Slack uses to verify bank accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, like, you have to do those microtransactions where it says, hey, we're going to deposit like 2 amounts less than 10 cents in your account over the next 5 days, and you have to tell us what they are, and it's always a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
So you can use Plaid, and Plaid has an API that allows you to kind of look at transaction histories or things like that. It integrates with a bunch of different banks, so you can actually use Plaid to pull down your transactions and sync them into your Laravel app. So pretty cool. So check that out if you're interested in just seeing an example of another Laravel application built with Vue, or if you'd like to use it for yourself. Great job, Austin. Looks awesome.
Perfect.
Okay, hey man, I know that you are on a time crunch, and we can wrap this one up. Did you have anything else you want to talk about real quick before we finish?
No, nothing else. It's cool having another baby. I think my tune will change when she's at home. I had 2 nights in a row of 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. So
There you go, man.
I better cut that out before. I hope Ree doesn't hear that. She doesn't need to know that I had uninterrupted sleep.
Hey, man, like, some babies just start to sleep pretty early. You never know. Maybe, like, Eli was a boy. Girls are a little bit different, man. She might actually surprise you. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. All right, everybody. This was episode 127. Thanks so much for tuning in and hanging out with us a little bit. We'd love it if you'd rate the show up if you liked it, or share it with your friends. That would be amazing. As always, you can find show notes for this episode at podcast.laravel-news.com/127. And of course, if you have any questions, hit us up on Twitter at Jacob and at Michael Dorinda, or at Laravel News. Make sure you say congrats to Michael. Way to go, buddy. And Ree, congratulations, guys. All right, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Adios.